operation, and decommissioning. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you state that the environmental review process for the project involved HRS Chapter 343 review. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is it true that some phases of the project have already received federal funding from the National Science Foundation?
No phases of the construction project have received any funding from the National Science Foundation.
What about the project itself?
There have been no funds from the National Science Foundation that contribute to the TMT construction project. There have been only very early funds to do site testing, which are of general use to the astronomy community. That was an award to, not to TMT, but to Aura in 2005. And there's a planning grant that's going on now, which is to study means by which the U.S. community could participate in the TMT project. Neither of those are contributions to the project that I'm responsible to build.
What about the $18 million grant?
I just addressed the $18 million grant. That was an award, I believe in 2005, to Associated Universities for Research in Astronomy by the NSF. It was to study some aspects of TMT, but also to the Giant Magellan Telescope and a variety of other activities. It was not a contribution to the construction project. It did include some work on site testing, which is generally available to all astronomy observatories, and all that data has been published. And the NSF has stated that neither of those grants constitutes a federal undertaking.
Yeah. Can we do something about the noise in the foyer? It's interrupting our hearing.
Do you anticipate that future NSF funding will be sought?
It may be sought, but it certainly can't be sought until a decision is made on the site.
And at that time, what would you be seeking funding for?
I don't know.
Could it be operations and maintenance?
It could be that or other things.
I see. In 2011, you testified that the project was not yet fully funded. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you agree with Dr. Stone, who testified last month, that even now the project is not yet fully funded?
That's correct.
And how do you anticipate that the future partners would be selected or found?
Once a site is determined, then fundraising efforts would take place. I myself do not have a role in that fundraising. I'm responsible for the design and construction.
Okay. An exhibit we submitted earlier, which is a letter from Daniel Inouye to President McLean at the time in 2008, states that the telescope operation will seek operation and maintenance costs. Do you still anticipate that that still will be the correct case?
I don't know what we will do.
Okay.
How is it that you know that TMT does not have to do Section 106 or NEPA?
I'm generally familiar with those laws to know that they fall on federal agencies.
Right.
Okay. And I have read the correspondence between NSF and the Federal Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, in which the determinations were made that I described in my testimony.
And where are those documents?
I don't know if they're exhibits, but you asked me my knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just asking. And
Yeah.
do you know? So, and you've had actual conversations with the National Science Foundation yourself?
I did not have conversations. I'm just aware of the correspondence and the decisions that they made.
And you stated earlier that NSF or that the NSF has decided that TMT is not an undertaking. Is that correct?
The NSF has stated repeatedly, including in the grant, the planning grant, that they have made no commitment to construction, that the funds aren't to be used for construction, and have no plans to anticipate any support of construction. That's been stated in writing, and I'm aware of that.
Mm-hmm. And what is your definition of an undertaking?
I have to rely on what the NSF wrote in their letters.
But you, as the project manager, you don't have any responsibility to ensure that federal law is adhered to?
I'm relying on the written letter of the General Counsel of the National Science Foundation on that matter.
Okay, and you stated earlier that you are aware that TMT has received $18 million from NSF?
No, I testified that that $18 million grant was not to TMT. It was an award made to the Associated Universities for Research in Astronomy in 2005, I believe. The principal investigator was William Smith, who's the president of Associated University Research in Astronomy. And from that federal grant, Associated University Research in Astronomy made some sub-awards to us and to other parties for various tasks that were covered by that grant.
Okay, and what other grants has NSF issued to yourself or anything relating to the TMT?
The only other grant, in fact, the only grant directly to TMT that I'm aware of in connection with TMT is the $1.25 million planning grant that we also discussed earlier. Okay. The more recent one, 2011, I think, or 2012. It ends in 2017, so it's 2012 grant. And that's a planning grant to understand how the U.S. community could participate in TMT's program and how the NSF could participate if they chose to. And that's the grant, when it was granted, stated specifically in the award documentation that there was no funds to be used for construction, there was no commitment to future support of construction, and they didn't anticipate supporting construction in future.
Is it your testimony that only things relating to construction require Section 106 review?
I'm only quoting what the NSF has written, and I take them as the source since they are the responsible federal agency.
So you, as the recipient of any federal funds, is it your testimony that you are not responsible to conduct Section 106?
I believe I have no responsibility beyond what comes in that grant award and their statement, yes.
Okay. And is it also your testimony, let me ask you this, do you know, what is your understanding of Section 106 and why is it done?
It's part of the National Historic Preservation Act. I'm not sure I could go on much further than that.
Is it for Native Hawaiian organizations?
I don't know the complete scope of that act.
Is it to allow Native Hawaiians to communicate their religious or cultural attachment to a land, a particular land?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness, there's no foundation. He's already said he's not aware of the scope of that.
Actually, he did say he is aware and is familiar with the National Environmental Policy Act and the National Historic Preservation Act, and I'm just trying to ask what he
but not
knows
its scope
about it.
to Native cultures.